So in our midst today, we have Ruby Uche. She's a sustainable finance and ESG consultant, and she's going to be talking us through everything related to this. She's a sustainable finance professional and licensed ESG manager, working at the intersection of transition finance, blended finance structuring, and impact measurement across sub-Saharan Africa. She holds an MSc in Sustainable Finance and Accounting from the University of Sussex. Her experience spans net zero consulting for UK corporate, sustainable finance, and ESG consulting for Africa's largest gender-led blended finance vehicle, and capacity building and program management. She publishes evaluative research on Nigeria's just transition financing, gender lens investing, and carbon accounting at Capital and Climate. She serves on the board of YASIF, that's the Young Advocates for a Sustainable and Inclusive Future. Her work also focuses on sustainable finance and accounting, carbon accounting, ESG reporting, and climate policy capability across Africa. So Ruby does a whole lot. Now, there's an emoji where you can give her a round of applause. Just to welcome her. Thank you. I can see the applause is already. So I'll hand over the microphone now to Ruby to give her own presentation. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Keith. I hope I got the name correctly. Good evening, everybody. It's always weird when I hear foreign people introduce, because I'm like, feels like I'm watching my life play out, right in front of me. I never get used to it, but thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. My name is Ruby Uche, as Keith rightly said. And yes, I currently work in sustainable finance space in Lagos, Nigeria, handling projects all across Africa. But my background wasn't something different. So in 2024, I just woke up one morning and decided that, I wanted to do something different. I felt like we had a much bigger issue at hand, which the founder of Climate Professional has rightly said. We have a big problem at hand, the problem of climate change, and nobody's exempted from it, most especially Africa. Somehow Africa seems to be one of those continents that will be facing the brunt of climate change. And as such, it's become very important that we all put hands together to save our planet, save our globe, save our continent. And so in 2024, I was working as a project manager at a UK firm, but I was in Lagos and I was working from here. And I just decided that I think I see the future, and I think the future is all about sustainability. And I wanted to position myself to be, in that space so that I can be where things are happening, make a change, make a difference. And probably maybe one day my name might go down in history as well as one of the pioneers, people who saved Africa due to their contributions in climate change. And I asked myself, what can I do then? Because I was in tech, and tech is worlds apart. It is quite, it's far, and it has almost little to nothing to do with the whole history of climate change. And I decided that at that point in time, my best bet would be to pursue a master's and use that as a pivot into the industry. Of course, now in hindsight, there are other ways to go about it, which I'll be sharing with you today as part of my slides. But at the time, with the information that was available to me, I thought that was the best alternative. And even right now, I don't regret it. It's just that there are other ones now that I've discovered, which I'll share. So I decided to study abroad. At the time, I had no means of funding that, obviously. I was working for a UK company, but they were paying me in Naira. So what that meant was that my income was nowhere near sufficient to pursue the plan that I had, which was to study abroad. But as God would have it, and as, thanks to opportunities that are now extending to the global south, there are tons of funding available for people who know what they're doing in Africa and who wants to study abroad and who has or who have what it takes to be recipients of such funding. I chased after one with all my heart and with lots of prayers. The Chevening scholarship, some of you might know about it. Probably one of the most difficult scholarships in the world to get. And God gave it to me, because I don't want to say I won it, because God gave it to me. I traveled to the UK. I studied my master's in sustainable finance and accounting, and that was where I made the transition. So anyways, I have a slide in my presentation where I talk a little bit of how I moved, so I won't say too much here. I'll move to the next, we'll go right into it. Okay, so as of now, we have so much statistic being put out there about what Africa needs, what Africa doesn't need. There's a lot of rave around Africa, especially in the investor community. You know, it's everywhere. But the one I settled for today is that as of now, according to Climate Policy Initiative, Africa needs about $277 billion a year in climate finance. And it's currently receiving less than 12% of that. So that means that there's a more than 80% deficit in funding. And in the last few years, yes, I must admit that there's been a significant inflow of capital compared to what it used to be. There's been a lot of rave, you know, in the global north, which is, so when I say global north, I'll give you examples like the United Kingdom, European countries that are doing, in quotes, much better, you know, economy-wise. There are lots of investors there that, for different reasons, have decided to focus on Africa and, you know, help Africa in its battle against climate change. When I say for different reasons, I mean there are investors who are doing it because they want to feel good. There are investors who want to pump money into Africa because they feel like that's the next big thing. And then there are investors who are truly concerned about Africa and want to put their money to good use. But for whatever reason, we appreciate the influx and we're not pointing fingers. But the fact is that Africa is a huge market when it comes to climate change and climate finance thereof. It's currently in public eye, it's in the spotlight. And that's why we think that it's really important that Africans take advantage of that and, you know, position themselves to actually benefit from that and be instruments in making sure that those funding coming in actually does what it needs to do. So in that light, we also have projections that by 2030 there will be more than 3.3 million jobs, green jobs, that would be created as a result of the funding that is coming in, as a result of the money being pushed into Africa. 3.3 million jobs will be created. That statistic was given by FSD Africa, which is a major household name, if I can put it that way, when it comes to finance in Nigeria. So you can take their word to the bank, basically. So I just wanted to show everyone what, you know, brought most of you here, just so that we have to see how broad our interests are, and see also at a snapshot the various aspects of sustainable finance or sustainability in general. So for some of you, you're still not sure where you want to be, which is fine, absolutely fine. So you want a little bit of everything. Some, it's the carbon markets and carbon finance. A very interesting field. We'll talk about that. For some, it's sustainability disclosure. Sustainability disclosure happens to be one of my favorites, and it's exactly what the convener showed you earlier when we talked about ESG disclosure. There's impact investing, people who are investing for the greater good, and climate venture capital. We have people who are interested in green bonds and sustainable debt, blended finance and development finance, climate risk, project finance for renewable energy, and ESG analysis, ratings, and reportings. So what I tried to do was to make sure that everyone here goes home with something. I tried to cover as much as I could, whilst leaving you enough room for curiosity and, of course, enough room to build on whatever you learned. So I'm hoping that I can plant a seed that will then grow, into something much bigger. So I'm going to take you through quickly how climate capital actually flows. So from the global north, or from Europe, or from the United States, or from wherever it is, how does this money actually get into Africa? So we have institutions called multilateral institutions and development finance institutions. To make it easy to understand, I would mention household names like World Bank, which I'm sure everybody here has heard of at some point. The IFC, AFDB, ADB, these are institutions that shape the future of countries. These are really household giant names that make a difference when you hear them. So they are the ones that aggregate the fund. So for the World Bank, say 100 countries come together and put together money. Germany, US, UK, as many. So for example, World Bank would be like a custodian. So World Bank has, say, $500 million sitting with them that they want to push to Africa. So they are the custodians of those money. They're the ones that can speak to countries and say, oh, Germany, we need some money from you. We want to help Africa. Germany will say, okay, World Bank, you can have $5 million. They get from France and get from everywhere else, and then they direct that money to where it needs to go. So that fund originates from there. And then this World Bank will say, how do we share this money? How do we distribute this money in a way that it actually makes impact? They can decide to give it in form of grants. Grants, when I say grants, I mean non-refundable funds. So they can give, when you hear grants, it's just like someone dashing you money. Yeah. They can also do loans, because sometimes, not every time will they give grants. They could give loans, but the difference is that the difference between the loan that they would give you and the loan that you would get, for example, from purely commercial sources, would be that because they have the concept of blended finance. I don't know if anyone has heard of it before. So blended finance, I'll quickly explain, basically is you getting finance from different sources. So it's like, I'll give an example that's relatable to everyone. Currently in Nigeria, apologies if there are other people from different countries, but I'm Nigerian and that's like the only, it's my immediate environment. So pardon me if I reference Nigeria a lot. It's just what I know and the environment that I know. But we can always relate it to wherever you're from. And as long as it's Africa, we're all good. So currently, I think the interest rates, if you want to, as a business, as an individual, if you're interested in borrowing money, should be about 30%. Now that is high. In fact, it is ridiculously high, because a business that gets funding at an interest rate of 30% means that you already have finished your profits, whatever profit you're going to make. It just makes it really difficult for businesses to thrive. It makes it difficult for people to access finance. And as such, the government can come in and say, okay, we understand that the interest rate is high. What we can do is we can gather funds from different sources. So when I say different sources, I mean funds from commercial people who are purely profit driven, like commercial banks. They will give you money at the rates that will benefit them, right? But then there are also another set of people who we call philanthropists, or will I say catalytic funders, people who are willing to take a little bit less interest just because that money is being used for the greater good. So it's like someone saying, normally I'll lend you money at 30%, but because I want to make sure that you succeed, because I want to make sure that you're not your business doesn't close down, or for any other benevolent reason that they might want to give out the money, as long as it's tied to some form of impact, they might say, okay, I will go down to about 15. I'll still collect interest, of course, because that's how I survive, but I'm not going to take it at the normal market rate. So if we have 2 or 3 people like that, combined with the people that are going full-on commercial, what you realize is that when you put it together, the average interest rate will reduce. So when you blend all those sources, those finances from different sources, you're able to get a reduced interest rates. So that's what blended finance is. So blended finance vehicles are basically funds that comprises of funding from different places that has managed to reduce the cost of interest. So those are concessional loans. That's, I explained earlier, loans that are given by people who are willing to go a little bit lower and to get a little bit less profit and make more impact. We have first loss capital. There are people who are saying, are willing to say, I know that this business is risky. I know that Africa is a very risky market, which we know because most emerging markets are risky markets, by the way, because there's so many uncertainties, political instability, there is insecurity, there's high interest rate, there's high inflation rate. All of these things contribute to increasing the risk profiles of emerging markets like Nigeria, Africa, and all that. So there are people who will say, yes, I know that all these risks exist, but I'm still willing to put in my capital, combine my capital, my money. And if anything happens for any reason, and this money goes in and doesn't come out, I can take the loss. Or they'll say, pay every other person and pay me last. So if you have 10 people that came together, the first loss capital investor can say, I get it, I'm willing to let go of my money, take the risk. If anything happens and the project does not do as much, or the returns doesn't come as much, pay every other person and then pay me last. I'll take the first loss. I'll be the one to take the loss, basically. So yeah, I moved from there. So I'm just giving you different ways by which this money actually flows into Africa. Then we have, when the money actually comes in, who is going to receive the money? Fund managers, they're the ones that, the private equity funds, which I work in a private equity fund. I think there's a slide where I talk about it in more detail, so I'll not go too deep into that. But we have fund managers, they are the ones who receive that fund, and they're the ones who are the custodian of that fund. And they decide where that fund goes to. So most fund managers are always in Africa, because you have to be in the terrain to understand. They can't just give the money. You can't be a fund manager for a fund for Nigeria or Africa and you are some in another country. You have to be on site, you have to be on the ground. So most of these fund managers are on site, and they know the reality of the country. They know who needs help. They know where to divert the money to and all of that. So where are the most common places where fundings would usually go? In the country that I'm from, Nigeria, it's a very SME driven economy. I think about 90% of businesses in Nigeria are SME. So it's basically an SME driven country. Even most of our GDP is getting from there. So it's a huge part of the country, and as such, there's a high likelihood that most of the money that come in will be directed through here. So MSMEs can be in any field, but as long as they're in business, medium business, small business, large business, they are an MSME. And breaking it further down, you have maybe businesses in renewable energy. When they asked where you would invest in earlier, I saw a lot of people saying renewable energy, and it's not surprising because that's like a hot cake when it comes to projects that would be likely to receive funding. We're looking at renewable energy. There's one that's also coming up, green real estate, so sustainable cities and sustainable building and sustainable housing, whatever term you want to use, but that's it. And then we have agriculture as well. I am surprised that nobody mentioned agriculture, but then I understand it. I understand why, but yeah, maybe you guys should not push agriculture to the side. There's something called climate smart agriculture, a little bit different from the conventional agriculture, but yeah, because agriculture is also one of the main lifelines of Nigeria. So I believe that it's also a field that will receive attention in the coming months or coming years, as the case may be. And then we have impact and reporting. So when that money is being put into these businesses and these projects and these communities and whatever the case may be, there has to be, somebody gives you money, you have to be able to report it. You have to account for it. You have to talk about what that money is being used for, who is receiving the money, and what the impact is, of that money that's going in. So that's where impact and reporting comes in. In other places, we'll call it monitoring and evaluation, whatever the case may be. There has to be a reporting process that goes at the back of that. There I put some frameworks that are popular in this field, like IRIS Plus, like TCFD, GRI, ISSB, 2X Challenge, SDG mapping. I don't know if these slides will get to you guys so that you can do your further research, but you can also take screenshots or you can write it down if you want to do more research on each of these things that I've mentioned. However, I think it will still come up in other slides, so I'll have the opportunity to explain. If you look below this list that I just went through, you see that I put some things in yellow, like policy and MRB specialists. So at this multilateral and DFIs, like World Bank, they need people who are able to interpret policies, right? So if they're looking at Africa, they need people who are able to like map out policies and be able to account for them, right? So we have people like, they make use of a lot of policy specialists, and in the blended finance vehicles as well, when they're structuring that finance. So I work in a blended finance project right now, and so they need people who can structure it. So they need people who can say, okay, if we need $10 million today, how many percent of that $10 million need to come as grant? How many percent of that $10 million need to come as commercial capital? That's commercial capital at the going market rate. How many percentage of that 10 million needs to come from catalytic investors, that investors who are willing to take a little bit more risk, for us to be able to end up with an interest rate of 10%. So there's a lot of mathematics that go into that. You need people who are specialists in finance, blended finance, which is what I do for a living right now. So there's a lot of roles around that. People who understand finance, who understand debt, cost of capital, who understand sourcing deals, which is the next one I'm going to, deal sourcers. So people who know where to go and ask for money. Because this money exists in the hand of a select few of people. But then some people don't even know where to look. So people who know, okay, if we go to BII today, BII is currently, sponsoring such projects. You can go to them and, ask them for funding. Then we have ESG analysts, who are people who, when you get the money, you have to be able to, like the convener said, you have reports. Say Dangote has a sustainability report. You need an ESG analyst, somebody that will look at the environmental, social, and government dimension of the business and be able to, report it, to account for it. So there is also project finance managers. When the money comes in, somebody obviously has to be in charge of drawing the financial model, making sure that the project goes according to plan, the financing is, going properly. Then you have the impact measurement and reporting leads. So if you're telling your investor that, the money you gave us, this is where it's going, somebody has to be on ground that can do what they call accountability, that can account for the impact that is being recorded as a result of the fund that was let's say disbursed in this case. Anyways, but just examples of roles that are roles that will come up just by the way the capital is flowing into the country at every step of the way. So I give you more examples here. I already mentioned some. These are some of the roles some of us don't even know exist. We have blended finance structurer, which I have explained. We have ESG analyst, which I've talked about, someone that evaluates, the social governance and environmental performance of investments. They will now produce rating. They'll say, this investment has an A rating, sustainability wise, which means maybe it gives more impact sustainability wise, or reduces carbon emission. That screens portfolios, advises investment committee. So you sit on an investment committee, and the only thing you're talking about is how this funding impacts the climate. That's your own job. Now we have climate risk specialists. So one of the things that when you're talking about sustainable finance that always comes up is risks, right? We are able to price and account for risk. So you're telling someone that if you don't go green, there's a high chance that you'll be left behind, because everybody is going towards the green path. And if your business says no, you don't want to go green, there's a high chance that you'll be left behind. Customers will not want to buy your product. For example, while I was still in the UK, I remember that it's such a big thing there that when you go into a supermarket to get things, you see people pick two cartons of the same two different brands of the same product and look at it and say, this one is not, they didn't write that they are using, they are recycling their products, they are recycling their cartons, or they didn't write that they are vegetarians or stuff like that. So it has gotten to the point where even before customers pick up your product, they look to make sure that is this person doing the right thing? Is this person even making any efforts towards sustainability? So you risk losing customers. You risk. There's also climate risk. Like the host was saying, I'm so happy that I'm not in the UK right now, just right now, because it's so hot. I think my friends were complaining about 40-something degrees. You won't understand how hot it is until you experience it, and it's not good at all, because the UK is not built for such hot weather. The UK typical house is built to insulate. So what that means is that you are basically cooking inside that heat. That is a climate risk, because things like, I think it was Venezuela, I was reading the news yesterday, that is experiencing serious natural disaster. I think earthquakes and all, like people have been dead, so many people dead, businesses destroyed. All of these are direct impacts of climate risk. But there needs to be somebody who can sit in the bank and tell the bank, you must price this risk into your finances, your financial models. If not, you risk, being left behind. You need a specialist for that. Someone that can be able to translate this risk into financial financial costs, if I can put it that way, so that you can factor it into what you do at the bank. You also have green bond specialists, people who are able to, put bonds together for a green project, put bonds together, and also put a framework around how these bonds will be, the proceeds from these bonds will be used, how it will be reported, and many other things. There's the next slide, carbon market analysts, people who work on, so the carbon market relies a lot on compliance frameworks, people who, if you are saying you have a carbon project, it has to be verified that it is truly not call it greenwashing, where people say something is sustainable and is not end up not being sustainable. So there needs to be a team that does project verification, someone that works on credit origination, where the money is going to come from, how is the trading going to be done, how is the offsetting going to be, who is going to take off the proceeds. There's a lot that goes into the carbon market, and as such you need people who are the experts in this field. You have, sorry, I need to move my laptop. So you have impact measurement specialists, I've explained before, development finance analysts. Those are self-explanatory, but these are some of the roles that can begin to let's say pique your interest, to just get to know more about. There's something for everyone, and that's one thing about the beauty of sustainability. It's such a field, such a relatable field, that no matter what walk of life you're from, there's always something that there's something that you could do with your skill set, which I will explain later. Now, where are these jobs? It's easy to say there's jobs, but where do I start looking? So what I did when I was working on this is to assume that this is for people who don't know where to start. Just because I know that there are quite some people who are maybe just finishing school and are looking to go into the sustainability space, or there are people who are actually experts, they're experienced but not in sustainability, and they realize that they want to be in that space but they don't know where to start. So this is quite basic. We have, so for the DFIs that I mentioned earlier, you have banks like African Development Bank, which World Bank, IFC, Green Climate Funds, FMOs, GGGI, British International Investment. These are multilateral institutions that have a lot of their portfolio in Africa. So most of these people are listed here. They are very crazy about Africa, and as such, they continue to recruit talents from Africa for African-based deals. Then we have fund managers, like Alicia Capital, Aroa Capital, Helios Investment Partners. There are some fund managers that are not fund-backed, Leapfrog Investments. I just gave you a bit so that you can then do further research, but I just said to list some out here so that you can know where to start looking from. Now we had advisory and consulting. So all of us, I'm sure most of us know the big fours, McKinsey, KPMG, Ernst & Young, PwC, and the likes. Each of these consulting giants or advisory giants in Africa have sustainability teams that their work is to basically do things sustainability related, right? So it's a good place to look if you're looking for people who are looking for climate finance talents. You can start from each of these places and go further in your search. Next slide is talking about what are the entry routes. So after all said and done, where do I start from? What do I need to do as a fresh graduate or as someone who just finished school, or someone that is still studying and is just trying to do the background work to make sure that by the time I'm done studying, I'm ready to launch into the sustainability space or sustainable finance space. The first one is building the technical flow. Of course, before you put yourself out there, you have to make sure that you know something. You may not know it all, but you must have enough basic knowledge to at least spring from. So you can take some courses. I put some here. For example, the CGEM is a course that I took in February. The full meaning is Certified Green Card ESG Manager. It's a global course, so it's not dependent on your location. You can take it from wherever you are in the world. In my cohort, I think we had about 200 people from different countries: UK, US, Africa, anywhere. But even though I had done a master's, I just felt like I needed more knowledge when it comes to ESG. And I decided to pay for the course and I decided to take it. But if you're saying, oh no, I don't have money to pay for course, which I understand if you're a fresh graduate, luckily for you, there are so many free education platforms online, like Coursera, like EDX, that you can take free courses, just free trainings on ESG, on climate change, just to familiarize yourself. Nothing serious. It's not a certification or a license, but at least it gives you begin to build your technical capability whilst you find your way in. So build your technical flow by all means, know your subject matter. Then number 2 is, once you've done that, once you feel confident enough to be able to stand your ground, you can then get close to live deals. So live deals are projects that are currently going on in maybe fund managers. For example, there are internships. People like AFDB, they would constantly put out internships. People like World Bank, even like Nigerian-based VCs as well. They would put out we're hiring for interns. And of course, because you're starting out, you need to be very comfortable with the idea of starting from internship level. I know that especially for the experienced ones among us. Sorry, someone saying something. Hello.
I think we must have minutes.
Okay, so especially for the experienced one among us, I'll be a little bit.
Ruby.
Yeah.
Sorry to just cut you. Mercy, do you have a question or is there a problem? I see your hands continually raised. Okay, you can continue, please.
Okay, all right. So I was saying that, what was I saying? Sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. Yeah, so I was saying that for the experienced ones among us, there's this, what I call it, dilemma. With all my experience, I have 10 years experience, I have 12 years experience. It's going to be a little bit difficult for me to, start at internship levels, to start building my career. But that's the thing with transition. You may not, sometimes you might be lucky enough to get, roles where you transition directly if you have transferable skills. But for the young ones, and especially for the ones who really, really are determined to get into this space, be open to internships. They're one of the fastest ways to get into organizations like this, like fund managers, sustainability consulting firms. Like I said, just get as close to them as possible. Apply, build the network as much as you can. Live on LinkedIn. I cannot say this enough. You have to live on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is such an underrated tool for career professionals, especially when you're trying to make transitions. And that will lead me to my third point, which is build a public track record. So before somebody can actually take a chance on you and hire you, or before somebody can take a chance on you and give you a job, don't wait until you get that. Start building your portfolio, a public track record. For example, on LinkedIn, write. If you finish taking a course on climate change, write about it, write what you learned. You don't have to be working in a fund to be able to analyze a deal. Yes, somebody invited you, fine. Pick the reports from that deal because they'll most likely publish a report. For example, if AFDB announces that they just signed a $500 million fund to Africa for renewable energy, pick it up, read about it. Tell, like, in your own words, express your thoughts. Do you think this is, what do you think about this? Or what would AFDB have done better if you learned that much? Make a comment. When they post on their LinkedIn page, go on the page, make a comment. I don't mean comment like, oh, well done. I mean like a comment that, a well thought through comment. People get to see you. You get to, take your own space in people's minds so that by the time, you're ready to apply, your name is already out there. So people can also go to LinkedIn and look at, let me see what this person has been up to. Yes, this person may not have live experience, but, how much do they know? Where is the only place that they can check? LinkedIn. I don't think anybody will go to your Instagram page to check what you've done. So really, really, if there's anything I would hope to get from today's meeting would be to expose you to the capability of LinkedIn. My jobs, most of the jobs that I've gotten so far, okay, I won't say most, but some of the decisions that I've made that has really taken me really far, most of them came from LinkedIn. I can't begin to count how many opportunities that I've had access to just by, being on LinkedIn. How many people I've met? For example, the convener of this program, I don't think I've met him physically, but we're very good friends on LinkedIn because of how, we interact. We met on LinkedIn, I think, and since then we've kept in, contact. He posts on LinkedIn. I learn a lot. I post, he comments. That is how you build a network of people that you don't know where that person is going to be tomorrow. They could be the one that would, introduce you to a company that's hiring. So please take advantage of LinkedIn. I beg you. And like I said, be open to applying for junior roles, and then you're able to climb up the ranks. So for now, I'm talking about this is specifically for people who have experience, for people who are looking to transition. They're not just starting their career, they're looking to transition. To say, so are you saying that all of the 10 years I've worked in banking is useless? I have to start from scratch? No. So what I did was to map possible career paths and where those experiences would best fit into. So I'll start with banking. So maybe you work as a banker for 10 years, 5 years. You will be very useful as a climate risk specialist. You don't have to start from scratch, right? So if you can start looking for roles in climate risk. I'm sure if you go on LinkedIn and you type climate risk specialist, you see a ton of them. They believe that your experience in banking, your experience in financial analysis, your experience in building financial models, all of them will come in handy when you are working as a climate risk specialist. So that's a good springboard to start from. So if you have experience in audits, in accounting, that reporting skill, because it's basically reporting, being able to report, is very useful in ESG assurance and reporting. So Dangote can call you and say, we are hiring an ESG assurance and reporting specialist, so someone that can audit our sustainability achievements, someone that can audit how much we spent on sustainability, someone that can audit all the efforts that we've made and the impact, and put it into a way that investors can read and understand. That's something. There's law as well. Yes, people that create people that put policies in place, regulatory compliance. If you're working in compliance, you're working in law, there's space for you in sustainable finance. Because yes, there are people who do the actual finance work, but then finance needs policy, finance needs framework. There are people who, for every deal, yes, before any deal is signed, there's like documentations, right? There are policies that that uphold those deals. So you are very much needed. If you have experience in law, in compliance, you'll be needed at funds, you'll be needed in DFIs. You just need to know how to explain to them that, okay, I have experience in law, and this is how I think it can translate into sustainable finance. And they know as well, but you need to be able to, that value added, you need to be able to state your case as to why your previous experience, existing skills is a good launch pad for you to join them, because you're bringing in skills and then obviously adding more. Then there's management consulting. This is where you see, this is where I mentioned like KPMG, PwC. You can be a sustainability advisor. So your role would be using that your experience in consulting to consult for firms. So KPMG can hire you as a sustainability advisor or sustainability consultant, and your job would be to take on other firms, help them if they have a sustainability project, if their plan is, we want to start doing our ESG reporting, you're able to walk them through, hold their hands, just like any normal, traditional, conventional consulting, but this time just consulting for ESG or for sustainability. There's project finance, that is directly transferable into green infrastructure finance. A company might want to invest in solar and they need somebody who is skilled in project finance. Your skill is exactly the same skill that's needed. It's just that this time around, it's just financing for green. Then there's equity research analyst, and your skill in research, your skill in equities, investment, commodities are very much transferable into the ESG investment analyst space. Because like I said, at the end of the day, the finance is still the finance. The only difference is the perspective of ESG and sustainability and how that investment impacts climate change, how it impacts sustainability. So it's not like you're doing something totally different. It's just that and a little bit more, that and a little layer of sustainability on top of it. So these are some examples. The list is not exhaustive, it goes on and on, but I just thought to give you a few that just shows you where you can begin to look depending on what part of this category that you fall under. So the convener talked a lot about why being on the ground in Africa is a competitive advantage, because I know that Africa is going through the transition, things are hard, and some of us would rather be anywhere but here. And it's understandable, it's not a bad thing to want to be in a better environment. But you know how they say, if life gives you lemon, to make lemonade of it. So if you're already in Africa on the ground, why not get something that only somebody in Africa can get? You're already here. You have the advantage of location in this case. Take advantage of it. Even if you intend to jackpot at some point, whilst you're still here, you don't know what can happen. So take advantage of the fact that you're in Africa. Learn as much as you can when it comes to sustainable finance in Africa, Africa's problems, Africa's sustainability targets, and equip yourself with as much information as possible. Why? Because number one, DFIs will pay for contextual intelligence. So what the convener was talking about earlier was contextual intelligence. That's what I call it. Because you have to be there are some things that you would not know unless you are on the ground. And these DFIs, these people, they are outside. Yes, they can read about Africa, they understand, they hear the news, but there's nothing like, last mile, down to the market, down to the traders, down to the community. Someone who understands the local regulatory environment, someone who understands the informal economy, how it works, someone who understands political risk, who knows APC and PDP and what will happen to Nigeria if one wins and one does not win. In Kenya, in Ghana, is extremely valuable. You cannot replace them with a London analyst. Somebody sitting behind a desk in London, and you can't tell me that person will know more about the local Nigeria or Kenya or Ghana than someone who's on the ground. So they are willing to pay a premium for contextual intelligence. There's also
sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
We're running short of time. Sorry, so if you could just round up in like 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the meeting early.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so there's regulatory fluency as well. So read, like I said, read as much as you can on the CBN, FIRS, NERC, SEC. Sorry, I won't be able to go deep anymore, but just as much as you can look at the local institutions that govern finance in Nigeria. It's a rare competency. Look at deal flows. Go on Eventbrite, search for finance events happening in Lagos, finance events happening in Nairobi. You will see a lot. Just go, attend them, meet people. You have to expand your knowledge base, right? And that way you would get as much as you can from being in Africa and turn that into a competitive advantage rather than seeing it as a liability. So put this at the back of your mind. This words, TCFD, ISSB, GRI, CSRD, GCF. These are, I picked from different sectors or different what I call it, niches, that you can read up on and choose which one you want to, really focus on, because you can't be jack of all trades, master of none. So look at each of these, look for the ones that you think are more closely suited to what you're currently doing, or the ones that pique your interest the most, and become expert in each of these frameworks. These are all frameworks that I think will be good for you to, start looking at them. These are the things that you mention in your CV or your LinkedIn post, and you say, oh, this person knows what they're doing. So these are vocabularies that can separate you from the noise. So how do you become visible? I mentioned this a bit before. Publish your thoughts on LinkedIn, comment with substance, do case studies, find a public transaction, find a deal, find a grant, find an investment, write a breakdown of it on LinkedIn. Use the language of the industry. When you're making posts on LinkedIn, use as much of this language as possible, because that's how people know that you know what you're doing. Write articles. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you see that I have a couple of them. When you're not doing anything, when you're you have time on your hands, just pick up your pen, do some research, make sure that what you're saying is right and credible, publish away. It doesn't cost you anything. The more you have, the more you build your portfolio, and that helps you become really visible. So the hard truth, location bias is real, right? Things are changing now. Like I said, the international market is becoming more interested in the African market, but there are some applications you make, they'll tell you, oh, we can't do anything with you because you're in Africa or whatever. There's a location bias, there will always be. Or like we said, is to focus on the good and ignore the negatives. Whilst there are people who are saying, oh, we don't want someone in Africa, there are people who are saying we want people in Africa. So take advantage of that location bias. Focus your attention on people who are actually interested in having people on ground. And whilst we say gather knowledge, realize that there's something called certifications arms race, where you are taking courses everywhere, here and there, just so that you can feel like you're doing something. But nothing beats actually getting your hands dirty, doing something. So while certifications are good, make sure that you don't all you do is just amass certifications just because certifications without hands-on experience it's not really going to give you much. So as well, try to look for a niche that you would focus on. Don't just do, oh, you're just an ESG expert nowhere, right? We have an AI is coming out. Some of these roles, even in ESG, are also being automated. So try to find something to specialize in and stay deep. Don't just stay at the surface level. Your network is your deal. Like I mentioned earlier, is who you know. Sometimes all about who you know, not what you know. So try as much as possible to build networks on LinkedIn. The people you connect with could be the people that will refer you tomorrow. So try and build your network. Quickly, I found somebody on LinkedIn that talked about how he did an analysis on 50 career transitions, and he realized that 81% of people who move into green jobs bring prior green skills. So you see that that's almost everyone. Nobody is starting, only about 19% is starting from scratch. What are those skills? Communication and storytelling. If you are good in telling stories, people need you to help them publish their ESG reports. People need you to help them talk about their ESG impact. Stakeholder engagement, project management, industry knowledge, strategy and problem solving. These are some of the skills that people were able to carry forward from their previous roles in finance, in consulting, in engineering, in media, in law, policy, tech, data, education, non-profit. You can see that there's space for everybody. Nothing like this is not for me. No, there's space for everybody. Sorry, I'm not able to really talk about them one by one, but once you get these slides, they're pretty much self-explanatory. Try to go through them, and yeah. So I would skip this slide because it's just me trying to say, when you're looking for a job and you see things like experience with this, familiarity with ESG frameworks, breaking it down to what they're actually looking for so that you know what to equip yourself with. When you get this slide, please go through it. It's very, very explanatory. I try to break it down as much as I can. Just read through it and make sure that you take notes of the things that I mentioned. I just thought to bring 2 young professional programs that are very, very popular. So check for AFDB YPP. I think it opens every year, September to October. So you can keep an eye for this year's own. Apply. IFC Associate Program opens November to January annually. Apply. By all means, apply, please. So should you do a master's? If yes, which one? Yeah, so if you want to be like me and say, oh, you would rather go through a master's, there are scholarships available to you. The UK is very good at that. Look around, Chevening, Commonwealth, DAD, MasterCard, find one. Look for a course in sustainability. I did the one on green, University of Sussex, Sustainable Finance and Accounting. Other schools are offering other courses. Please, by all means, do some research. Some of them give full funding, some give partial funding. You can do a master's. Master's can also help you with that transition. And basically, this is just a climate finance ladder, how it will go from analyst. You spend maybe a year to 3 years as an analyst and associate. You move to a senior analyst as a consultant, another 3 years, move to a senior consultant and a director. So this is just basically how it usually works. It doesn't mean that this is how it will be for everyone, but textbook knowledge, this is how you climb up the ranks as a finance person. I would skip this. This is just bonus slide, so you can read it when you can. So yeah, importantly, leave this session with a plan. Don't just say, oh, we have heard this. Do something about it. So sit down and ask yourself, among all the skills that I have now, which one do you think is it? What are the skills I have now? Where do I start from? Which certification do I want to pursue? Set up Google Alerts on your LinkedIn. So if a job in that industry drops, if a job in that space drops, follow all these people I mentioned, people that are hiring. If a job, there's a vacancy, you see it, pursue your certification, write your first LinkedIn climate finance post. If you've not made any post on LinkedIn, make that your target, write them, identify 3 target employers, start following them, start commenting on their page, then apply to an internship, apply to a fellowship, attend climate finance events, finish your certifications, build a piece of work that you can show in an interview. Reach out to people on LinkedIn that are in your space, just connect with them, have informal conversations and all of that. Don't just, let this talk just, go like that. Use this as a fuel and then, do something to do with. This is just a resource pack. I'm not going to go through it. These are publications I gathered together for you to read, newsletters, intelligence. These are websites that you can go to, free courses. Please take advantage of all of them. I'm sure they will do you a lot of good. I want to talk about myself, but I already did, so I'm going to skip this. How I moved from my BSc in economics to working as a project manager, to my master's and my first job in sustainability as a sustainability analyst, and now my role as a sustainable finance consultant. So it wasn't linear for me. It was back and forth until I finally found where I wanted to be. So yes, the opportunity is real. I hope I've been able to convince you that there's so much opportunity in this space in Africa. There's a talent gap. We don't have enough people. And this timing is perfect. This is exactly the right time. So Africa needs you. All you need to do is to make sure that you're in a position to build for it. I'm sorry I rushed towards the end. I just wanted to make sure I get to the end of my slide. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.